Hey, good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack here. Monday now, the 11th of November 2024. Happy Veterans Day to you. A huge thank you. Not just a token, everybody says it, but a really heartfelt thank you to all of you that have served and have helped to keep our country and other countries around the world safe. I have met quite a few people in active duty out while we're doing our work, especially National Guard, and they have been most helpful, very friendly. And boy, you talk about people being away from home. I'm gone a lot. Other people that cover weather, we're gone a lot. But the veterans that have to leave their families and, they may not come back, we really do appreciate it. I know I do. So look, we have to talk about another one possibly trying to develop. And what I mean by that, of course, is another tropical cyclone, maybe another hurricane. The models are really starting to get bullish on this. It just keeps going and going, this rinse and repeat pattern that we have seen really since mid to late September, all over here in the western part of the basin. Here we go again. So let's get to it, see what we've got out there. We'll get to that. First of all, I want to show you this. I did have this queued up. What's going on in the Westpac? Like 4 of these things all lined up out here. You'd think, man, there must be some huge MJO pulse out there. Well, it is gathering. The MJO is, trying to sort of re-strengthen out there, a lot of rising motion. So we have 4 of these tropical cyclones out here all lined up almost at the same latitude, pretty close to it. Pretty remarkable to see. Now, we certainly care about this part of the world, but I want to spend most of my coverage today on what is happening. I mean, at least I mentioned it, right? Over here in the Western Hemisphere. So let's take a look at a couple of posts here. This first one, odds are increasing for yet another tropical cyclone Genesis event, TC Genesis event to occur in the Caribbean. Development still hinges on the system staying offshore. That's very important. But models seem to be trending towards that. Track will be hard to determine until we nail down where and when tropical cyclogenesis occurs. Of course, that's always the caveat. But a lot of different pieces are starting to come together here, and other people certainly picking up on it. Worrying trends coming out of the ECMWF for the Caribbean. 120-hour forecast showing that's just 5 days out. The genesis of yet another tropical cyclone. This is a recent development as shown, and this is pretty remarkable, in the last 5 12Z runs of the Euro, the ECMWF, this verifying this coming up Saturday. Good agreement with the GFS as well, plus the National Hurricane Center, obviously on top of it. If we do get a name out of it, it will be Sarah. And I like this. This is a good way to put it. Isn't it too late for another hurricane? Nope, not at all. These are topics that I have covered regularly here because they're obvious. They're right in front of our faces. It's not like I'm some genius that figured this all out myself. It's right there. You can see it. And that is that the ocean heat content and sea surface temperatures in the Caribbean are warmer than most Septembers. And we're in November, so no wonder. The anomalous ocean heat content coupled with a growing La Nina, although it is, if you see Eric Webb's tweets lately, it's starting to falter a little bit, that La Nina, but it is there. The overall La Nina pattern in the East Pac and tropical Pacific, all of that leading to pretty much ideal conditions for development. So yeah, and finally, obviously Fox weather on top of it as well. I'm going to see these folks coming up on Wednesday afternoon. I try to get up there every fall, and we recap the year that's come and gone and look ahead to the next year and maybe even some new technology we might want to be trying out. So I'll be up there to see, maybe I'll see Steve Bender and Ian Oliver. We shall see. But anyway, Steve posting this to his social here on Twitter, formerly known as X. See what I did there? Late season run yet again, right? The Western Caribbean staying active this November. Point is, we're all seeing it. We see what's out there, the model guidance, the pieces of energy, everything's there that we could get another system, and we're going to have to watch this very carefully, not just for U.S. interest. I know most of my audience is in the United States. I get it. But we have Jamaica, we have the Cayman Islands, the Yucatan, Central America, Honduras, Nicaragua, and of course Cuba, which was rattled by a pretty big earthquake yesterday, and then Hurricane Rafael before that, and they've got the ongoing power outage issues down there. This is important stuff, and if something does develop, it'll keep boosting that pretty important ACE score, and I'll talk more about that later in the week. I was going to do it today, but I want to wait and see if we're really going to get this to develop. And then we're going to really get into why the ACE, the accumulated cyclone energy, is such a good metric to use to gauge a hurricane season over numbers of named storms. We'll talk about it later. This is more important. So here it is. The yellow X is up on the 48-hour portion of the outlook. And when you expand this out to the next 7 days, we go orange up to 50% now. You could toss a coin, right? It doesn't work that way, but yeah. Looks like this really is going to try to get going. An area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms to the south of Hispaniola over the central Caribbean Sea is associated with a tropical wave. That's unusual for November. A tropical wave out there. All of that expected to move slowly westward during the next few days, and environmental conditions appear conducive for gradual development. A tropical depression could form late this week or this weekend while meandering over the western Caribbean Sea. So we're going to have to be on top of this. Now look, November development, I did show this in my morning discussion. Not unheard of. This is the first 10 days. That's come and gone. We're in the second 10 days now. And there's quite a few areas out here randomly scattered. But by and large, the overall trajectory of everything, development and track, is generally southwest to northeast. There's a few that have come up into the Gulf, but that's pretty hard to do. If we move it to where we are now, you get less development areas. There's about 10 down there. And one of these that developed way out here to the north of the Antilles, fairly far to the north, ended up being Kate back in 1985. And of course, that made landfall very close to, if not right on, to Mexico Beach. Late season, very late season in 1985. A very busy year that year. Lots of landfalls in the U.S. in 85. So it's not unheard of. Then, of course, as you get later in the month, you start really getting less and less. And then December, you would think it'll just completely finally shut down, right? Even the last 10 days of December, there's a couple of little guys out there that have happened. Alice, 1954, and then Zeta, 2005, the 2005 version. Yeah, remember all that? I do. So yeah, it's not unheard of. And, here you go. Here are the players. First of all, let's take a look at Raphael, what's left of Raphael sitting in here. Not sure which one of these swirls is actually Raphael, honestly, but the bones of Raphael sitting in there. We'll look at this closer on a Gulf of Mexico zoomed in shot in just a moment. But here's all this other stuff going on. And I'm going to tell you something. Look, this thing's already developing that tail. I mean, it's trying to come together already, right in front of our eyes. And no wonder. I mean, the conditions down here are so favorable. And as that one post I showed you from Kieran said, the water temperatures are like where they would be in September. They are remarkable for September standards. And it's freaking November 11th. So already spreading rainfall across Hispaniola, friends in Jamaica, eventually the Cayman Islands. We're all going to have to watch this closely as this whole thing moves over here and gets organized somewhere in the Western Caribbean. The signs are there. Speaking of signs, let's show you what a dead hurricane looks like. I told you I was going to show you this today. Dry air, wind shear, all of that stuff took its toll. That might be the last of the swirl from Raphael. Not really sure exactly what that is. It's just another area of vorticity. There's another one over here. So you can clearly see that. I mean, there's so much going on. If the atmosphere allowed, I mean, we could have maybe, I wouldn't think that these two would actually be separate. You'd probably have one here and another one here. It's just it's November. I mean, we'd be way off used up all the names and everything. Luckily, climatology is keeping things somewhat in check, but that might not help all the way through, as we'll talk about through the rest of this update today. So vorticity-wise, there's the energy up here, still kind of disorganized. Energy kind of spread out over a large area. There's that little vortmax I showed you in the Gulf of Honduras, well, close to it, Western Central Caribbean anyway. And then this elongated area with those two little spinny deals there. Some little piece of energy sitting off of Florida. Hey, let's go back to that Gulf shot real quick. There it is. Well, let's go to the wider shot, actually. Off of Florida, yeah, a little piece of energy sitting out here. Energy everywhere. Again, if it was like September, remember September 2020, they were just popping up all over the place, those little short-lived deals. Well, we don't have that this year. That's why we're not at 25 named storms. All of our stuff, most of it anyway, has been much more potent than we had in 2020. And so the named storm count is down, but the ACE score is higher. We'll talk about that more, like I said, probably on Friday. So that's there. And then this is there, the anomalous warm water temperatures, very prevalent all through here. That hasn't changed. This has just gotten warmer relative to average, and even warmed up physically, like for real, not just against the averages. I remember just a few days ago, the 26 Celsius line had already pulled its way south, kind of like this. And then whatever it was doing, I can't remember exactly, but it was definitely away from Florida. Now it's back, so like if you went out and measured, this is not a granular enough, they use that term a lot on election night, remember? Granular detail. The data is not granular enough to zoom in and get, real tight in here, the resolution, another way to put it. But yeah, 80 degrees down near Charlotte Harbor and vicinity, Fort Myers, just offshore, and then 81 degrees all through here, and 82, so 28 Celsius in the Florida Straits. I bring this up because the models are suggesting that maybe, just maybe, something tries to get up here. It's a very small chance. I'm not going to pretend like it's zero, because we do see it in some of the guidance, but it's not a very big chance because, hey, it's many days out. So let's see what we got. Here's our pieces of energy right here. Kind of trails off this way. There's that piece. It all shows up in the modeling, just like you see on the analysis that I showed you. So let's see what the GFS makes of it. This is the 12Z run today. We get this out to 3 days, and you get this area starting to spin up down here. It finally tightens up by day 4, and then by day 5, probably have a tropical depression or a tropical storm sitting off of Honduras, Nicaragua, and then by days 6 and 7, bona fide something down there, probably a name. Let's look at it. Let's just take a look. Air pressure would be like 984 according to the GFS. That'd be a hurricane. Nice strong surface high sitting, oops, I didn't mean to draw a box. What happened? Nice strong surface high sitting up here over the north, keeping it buried down here. But that changes over time. We can see this in the 500 millibar field, that pretty good ridging down there, but that changes, allowing the system to come up and eventually impact extreme South Florida. Look at that big front coming right there. Now look, this is important. That is a huge signal. All right, that's not some small feature. It's about 10 days out, but that's a pretty big feature. It's either going to be there or it's not, and we just keep this big ridge planted down here, and our system will be buried in the Caribbean. But the GFS pretty good at these troughs, right? So we're going to have to watch this very carefully, because this is suggesting that the ridge gets displaced, this big bubble of air over here, and our would-be cyclone moves around it and then out into the Atlantic. Of course, it gets sheared apart and just dies after Florida. Now, that might not happen. As the Euro suggests, it gets stuck down there over the next 10 days. The high pressure is just too strong. And any coming cold front or whatever back here is much later. That you just have too much ridging forcing this down there. So, what do we know? How do we take all this away? And what do we do with it? Well, it looks like something's going to develop. Maybe it doesn't, but the global models, especially the two main powerhouse models here, the Euro and the GFS, their ensembles, everything is pointing in that direction. And we know all the other parameters are there. We know how favorable it has been, so why doubt it? Everything that looks like it has tried to develop down there has gone on to do so. So why quit now? And so with that, we have to watch this very closely. First, for our friends down in the Caribbean, remember, it's not just U.S. interests here that are at stake. You also have the cruise industry, various and sundry cruise lines that go through these areas, especially this time of year, trying to shift those interests further to the south as snowbirds want to take those cruises. So there's that. There's just vacationers, you name it. This could end up being a pretty big deal. And one other important aspect, if this develops, let's just pretend that it does exactly what the Euro suggests here, and we'd get Genesis here at about day 5, and Kieran pointed that out in his post. So day 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, that's a lot of ace points. That is for sure. Might we even get to the point where we approach 200 ace points if something like this were to get very, very strong and hang around down in the Caribbean for several days? Getting way ahead of myself, but we're at almost 160 right now, and a very intense hurricane lasting for several days if it just mills around down in the Caribbean, that could put us over 200. It would be very interesting to see, obviously. All right, as I said, I'm trying to exit here. As I said, I'm going to be headed up to New York tomorrow, visiting with our friends at Fox Weather on Wednesday. I will have an update tomorrow, though. No live. We'll do that again probably on Friday. A good way to just start the day off as to what I'm looking at and so forth. So a live update on Friday morning around 9 a.m. I'll have my regular afternoon update tomorrow. No updates on Wednesday because I'm going to be doing a lot of business meetings and that kind of stuff at Fox. And then Thursday, Friday, we're going to be right back on top of this, and we'll see how things are developing. All right? All right. Have yourselves. I get so worked up on these things sometimes. It's hard to get my mouth and my brain to cooperate. Have yourselves a good rest of your Monday. As always, thanks for tuning in. And all of us at Hurricane Track, our nice community, appreciate you. And I'll see you again sometime tomorrow.